Here's a story that's going to ruffle some feathers. Some of my fellow conservatives and patriots will have different opinions, maybe even different from mine. And I would argue that in this particular case, I'm at about 85%. Okay, there's still 15% chance that you call it the nagging libertarian in me that says, I don't know, you're going down a dark road. And well, it's not, I don't know. It is a dark road. Unfortunately, it's, trying to choose between two dark roads. Which dark road is going to be better? And I will reveal I guess you could say the point that pushed me over the edge to where I'm 85% sure that I like my position, leaving open 15% chance that I could revise it in the future. It's not a huge story, but it is important that we discuss it. We have it posted over at patriot.tv. Florida Attorney General is investigating Florida State University murder suspect's use of ChatGPT to plan his attack. As we noted, the FSU shooting, which occurred in April of 2025, Phoenix Eichner, this guy's name, Eichner, killed Robert Morales and Tyru Shaba and wounded 6 others near FSU Student Union. ChatGPT was used. According to court records, they show that he used ChatGPT 270 times at least, 270 different conversations linked to him, including questions about firearms, mass shooting media coverage, peak crowd times at the student union, and how to disengage a shotgun's safety. And that last one was sent 3 minutes before he opened fire. There's lawsuits already out there. Attorneys for the Morales family allege that ChatGPT actively advised Eichner on how to carry out the attack, and they plan to sue OpenAI. Now, Florida Attorney General, who I like a lot, James Utmeyer, announced a formal probe into OpenAI today with subpoenas forthcoming, citing the FSU shooting, child safety concerns, and national security risks tied to potential CCP data access. Now, let's go ahead and let's start with the counter argument, right? The first inkling for any true conservative, staunch patriot, libertarian-leaning person is that, when you're just slippery slope. Once you start getting into, taking a technology such as artificial intelligence and restricting it in ways that basically put the potential for a lot of good to not be done, we'll say, because of the risk of the bad that can be done. Now you're going down that it's an argument similar to the gun argument, right? You can't just get rid of all guns. You just have to try to figure out how to prevent attacks with guns that are illegal, right? I'm dancing around this one because you don't even want to say how to keep guns out of bad guys' hands, because technically, even that, until they commit the crime, they are not bad guys, right? So, and how often have we seen someone who has never committed a crime, or at least been caught, never been convicted of a crime, didn't have a serious violent record or anything like that, and then all of a sudden they shoot and kill somebody in an act of murder. That does happen, and there's no way to restrict that person without going down very dark roads, such as red flag gun laws and stuff like that. Well, the same thing can happen, and I would say at this point likely will happen with artificial intelligence. This isn't the first time that AI has been used to commit murder, and I would argue that it's probably happened more than we even know. This happened because this guy was if you look at some of the chats that he was asking, it's obvious that he was flaggable by ChatGPT. He had already been banned from using the service before. We don't know why. We can assume that it's not easy to get banned from ChatGPT, from what I can tell. I haven't been banned yet, and I ask it some crazy conservative political questions. So, but maybe it's just looking for the bad stuff, right? And it's not just murder. AI, and it's not just ChatGPT. AI in general is already being used to create some pretty horrible things. It's already being used to con people out of money, to take advantage of the elderly and not only just the elderly. I mean, look, I know people close to me who still to this day cannot differentiate between AI generated images and or videos versus the real thing. And they say that when for quote unquote boomers, that is common, right? And it makes sense because they've always learned throughout their lives how to differentiate between reality and imagination, fakery, fiction, fantasy, because there's always clear delineators. And let's face it, with artificial intelligence, it's not always a clear delineator. It can be extraordinarily compelling, and that's why it can be used for such bad things. Then of course we get into the whole sex crimes side of it, which is awful. All that to be said, it is the murder that we're talking about today, and whether or not AI and OpenAI and ChatGPT should be in some way either civilly or even criminally liable. And the natural question after that is, what restrictions should government, if any, impose onto artificial intelligence companies that would act as deterrence or just, I don't know, some way to stop it. Again, there's a certain gray area here. Back to the article. OpenAI, OpenAI, the company says it identified Ichner's accounts after the shooting, cooperating with law enforcement, and is committed to improving its safety technology. A nearly identical situation arose in a Canadian school shooting, where OpenAI staff flagged the shooter's dangerous queries, recommended notifying police, escalated this to leadership, but then no alert was made. That might be more shocking than this one. They didn't actually flag anything until after the shooting happened, OpenAI, in this particular crime down in Florida. They found it after the fact and then handed it over to police. So they're trying to do the right thing. But because ChatGPT generates and participates in conversations rather than merely hosting content, the notion here is that existing Section 230 liability shields may not apply, making this a potentially landmark case for AI accountability. For those who don't know, Section 230 is basically what makes it to where if something really bad happens on Facebook or X or wherever, and crimes are committed as a result of those platforms, that the platforms themselves cannot be held liable for user-generated content, or in this case with AI, user-generated queries and information. But that still doesn't answer the question. All that points to is, so should Section 230 be revamped? Should it be eliminated? Should there be a separate version of Section 230 for liability protection under certain restraints for artificial intelligence companies? And now back to the slippery slope. In this case, this guy, the thing that's triggering, that's so telling, oh my gosh, he asked how to take the safety off on his shotgun 3 minutes before firing. So that clearly, ChatGPT helped him to commit murder. If it wasn't for ChatGPT, he probably wouldn't have even been able to get the shotgun safety off. But on the other hand, and here's the counter argument, how often do people go to ChatGPT or Google or whatever to find out information about their firearm? Maybe somebody is legitimately there. They're at the range. It's like, oh crap, trying to fire their new shotgun, and they can't figure out how to turn the safety off. They don't want to go ask the guy at the counter, so they just go to ChatGPT and ask the exact same question this guy asked. They're not doing it because they want to commit a crime. Should that person be flagged? Should should police be called? Their location, because they're on their phone, their location should that be sent to the police? Because, oh my gosh, somebody just asked a question that the Florida State murderer asked, so we need to flag this and get police on the scene, because obviously it's going to be the same thing. That's the question. Does there need to be constraints? Should there be? Should we get ChatGPT or all AI to start asking follow-up questions before giving information? Somebody asks, hey, how do you get the safety off on this particular gun? And should ChatGPT just show them, or should it say, I can give you that information, but What are you going to do with that information? Why do you need to do this? And then you have to explain to it. You have to get permission from AI. Again, slippery slope, right? Very inconvenient. High potential for false positives because somebody could be doing searches for something very mundane, very innocent, and they can be construed by AI or even by humans monitoring it, God forbid, and all of a sudden they're getting swatted. It's a gray area. There's no easy answer to this. But I'm going to err on the side of restrictions, which goes against every ounce of conservatarianism that I have. I don't like any restrictions on anything. I think that people should be held accountable for their actions. You don't blame the cigarette for somebody dying of lung cancer. You don't blame the gun for somebody using it for murder or suicide or anything else. You don't blame the car, unless the car was faulty, for causing a car accident. If these systems, these machines, these non-human whatever entities or mechanisms, if they are utilized in the act of committing crimes, does that mean that they should be basically that you can sue? It's, again, I'm not talking about faults, right? I'm not saying that if a car, the brakes aren't supposed to go out, but they went out because of manufacturer error or something to that effect. Okay, yeah, I get it. That's different from that. Oh, cars are bad, guns are bad, AI is bad. But again, in the case of artificial intelligence, we are faced with something that is potentially too powerful in the hands of nefarious actors. It's not like, guy can get a gun and he can go kill a couple of people. With artificial intelligence, without restrictions, with no constraints, it's very possible that somebody, and they're already in the process of doing this, I'm sure, and it's already been successful already, I'm sure, they can use it to, I don't know, hack a hospital. Oh, wait, that already happened. They can use it to hack the power grid. Oh, wait, that already happened. These aren't often talked about, but these are stories that are actually happening out there and then quietly buried because everybody and their dog has their future set on artificial intelligence saving the day. And look, I use artificial intelligence a lot every day. I use it for something. I use it for thumbnails, which was really interesting, asking ChatGPT to make me a thumbnail about a lawsuit against ChatGPT, but I had to do it. I can't draw it. So does that make me a hypocrite? Sure, maybe. But I do, in the case of artificial intelligence, I do want restrictions or constraints to what can be done. And I know what you're thinking. I know that goes against, you're going against your conservative values by saying that. Except there's two reasons why I'm okay with it in this particular case. Number one, as I mentioned, ChatGPT or artificial intelligence in general is already powerful enough to be used for great harm against humans. And it's only going to get easier for evil people to do very, very evil things with neutral artificial intelligence, especially when it gets into artificial general intelligence, which should happen anytime if it hasn't happened already. But number two, and this is what pushed me over the edge, is that I, as a conspiracy theory driven, Bible perspective believing, skeptical and a little bit what's the word for it? I don't want to say paranoid, but we'll call it paranoid. As that kind of person who does believe that artificial intelligence will be used to do these evil things, regardless of whether there's restrictions or not, all we can do is delay. Well, I opt to delay. I would love for AI to just not be here anymore. I know that sounds terrible, especially considering, oh, look, it's going to be able to do this and do that and save people. But I believe that it is going to be a portion of, if not primary tool of the demise of the human race. I think it's going to be an end times tool. And as such, it behooves me to, when in doubt, when we're in this gray area, I'm almost always going to side against artificial intelligence. It's not that I think that AI is necessarily evil, though it might be. There is that possibility. We'll discuss that some other day. I'm not saying that it's necessarily evil, but the potential for it to be used for great evil, and we're beyond potential, it already is obviously being used in some cases for great evil, that potential and that reality is enough for me to say, you know what, let's just hit the brakes. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has arguably the second toughest job in Washington, D.C., second only to President Trump. He's got a very razor-thin majority in the House. He has to deal with the feckless Senate GOP, and sometimes he has to cut deals. But sometimes he needs to draw the line. And when it comes to the murder of preborn babies, he should be drawing the line. Unfortunately, he is not, according to a report that we have over at discernreport.com. The one-year Medicaid ban on Planned Parenthood funding, passed as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, expires on July 4th of this year. Speaker Johnson is reportedly not including a renewal in the current DHS reconciliation bill, citing passage concerns and Trump's June 1st deadline. In other words, he thinks that rhinos like Mike Lawler will object to the DHS bill if he includes a renewal of the Planned Parenthood defunding. And that's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. He's got all the cards here, okay? They're using cards that he should be playing. They're using it against him. They're saying, we're not going to pass your DHS funding if you include a renewal of the Planned Parenthood ban. And he should be going to them and saying, look, I get it. You like killing babies. Great. But do you really want to go to your constituents and say, hey, I know that the Democrats had shut down the government partially, stopped paying DHS, stopped paying TSA, stopped paying Coast Guard, put our lives in danger, made you wait in line, but I can't, in my conscience, I can't pay those guys and ease your burden because I have to defend Planned Parenthood funding. Is that really the message that Republicans like Mike Lawler want to go with to their constituents? That defending Planned Parenthood funding was more important to them than ending the partial government shutdown, securing the Department of Homeland Security's funding? Johnson has the cards here. And he can also, I hate using this statistic, but he can also cite what is known about Planned Parenthood. And even after Roe v. Wade, even after being defunded, they still had a stellar year. In fact, their best year ever in 2025. They reported a record 434,450 abortions in this fiscal year. That's an 8% increase, and it represents one abortion every 73 seconds. I don't think they need the funding. I think they need to be demolished. I think that they are evil, and you have these rhinos that are going to reverse what the nation voted for, because we did vote for this. You can have your stance about abortion ban at 20 weeks or heartbeat bill or exceptions, no exceptions. This is about taxpayer funding baby murder, and we do have obviously we have the moral high ground, we have the spiritual high ground, but we also have the political high ground. This isn't about banning abortion. It's about not funding it with your dollars. Mike Johnson knows this. Mike Lawler knows this. America knows this. And yet, here we are. We're going to allow this victory to die. The victory that we had last year, defunding Planned Parenthood, it's going to die on July 4th. And Johnson's saying, we'll pick it back up with the next reconciliation bill in a few months. Well, there's two problems with that. Number one, that usually just doesn't happen. We'll kick the can down. We'll take care of it next time. That's the standard operating procedure in Washington, D.C. Doesn't matter Republican or Democrat. But number two, And more importantly, if you let it lapse even for a few months, you have engaged in paying for and actually making us pay for the murder of preborn babies. And that's not acceptable. The insurance you need to protect your American dream. That's the tagline for my great friends over at America First Healthcare. You can find out more for yourself. You can reach them by going to patriot.tv/health, patriot.tv/health. Check them out, see what they offer, whether it's for health, for life, for business insurance. They do a fantastic job. But that's just me saying it. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them through that link, talk to them, and see what they can do for you. Because look, we can say, oh great, it's awesome, they're America First company and blah 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 blah. They have their shared values and all that. That's great, right? It really is. But is it better? I mean, we're not going to be getting worse coverage just because we can they might give us worse coverage, but by golly, they promote America. That's that's just not going to happen. We are practical people, my audience here at Patriot TV. But with that said, they claim, and I would encourage you to research it, but they claim they actually have better coverage than what you get through the government-controlled healthcare systems or even many of the private healthcare offerings out there. And more importantly, perhaps for some of you, they offer better rates with, according to their website, with thousands of insurance plans to choose from. It can feel overwhelming to find the right plan at the right price. At America First Healthcare, we take a holistic approach to make sure we find the best coverage for your exact needs. We get you better rates by helping you choose the right type and amount of coverage. Then we shop around for the best results. They can save you up to 20% on the coverage. Who couldn't use? I know we're most of us, the vast majority of us, are paying. I mean, compared to what we used to pay, my goodness, we're paying a lot. 20% right off the top. That would be a huge benefit. So reach out to my good friends over at America First Healthcare. Go to patriot.tv/health. Patriot.tv/health. Amazon is making a huge move in the AI world, and it's going to affect literally everyone. Everyone here, at least in the United States, and possibly globally, because it's going to generate a shift, whether it's successful or not. And depending upon its success or lack thereof, we might be seeing two very different worlds in the coming years, maybe even the coming months. That's how big this is. And it's not going to get the fanfare. That's the funny part, is that this isn't going to be viewed as a huge story. Why? Because we live in distraction world. Everything's a distraction. There's always going to be something, whether it's Iran, or you got Melania Trump coming out today. Even President Trump said he was surprised, sort of blindsided by her discussion about Jeffrey Epstein. But that's the world we live in today. Always distractions. This story, on the other hand, actually has some pertinence and legs in both the short term and the long term. We have it posted over at economiccollapse.report. What Amazon's insane AI bet reveals about the price of survival. Now, this is, again, not just going to impact us, but it's going to, we should take this as a prompt for our own lives and how we handle things here in the, again, coming months and coming years. Whether you use Amazon or not, whether you use AI or not, this is going to impact how we operate as a society. And that's not hyperbole. This is a legitimate concern about what this is. I mean, just the sheer fact that we're talking about survival for a company as gigantic and integrated as Amazon, but that too, that's not about trying to fearmonger or scare people into thinking crazy things, because this isn't necessarily, by the way, a bad story. I don't like Amazon. Of course, I have concerns about AI, but this combination of that is being discussed by CEO Andy Jassy. It makes sense. I'm almost to the point of rooting for him. But let's get into the article, or at least the bullet points. You can read the whole article over at economiccollapse.report. So Amazon CEO Andy Jassy's shareholder letter, which he released today, isn't just a business update. It's a meditation on institutional courage, specifically the courage to tear down something that works rather than patch new technology onto old systems. Now, let me state up front that the author, one of our authors over there, Morgan G. Murphy, is a fan of this. So if you sense a little bias of rooting for Amazon, rooting for AI, rooting for this to work, that is not accidental. And look, people, they have their opinions, and they're allowed to have their opinions, and we will publish their stories. And unless they're totally wrong about something, I don't edit. I don't censor anybody. Back to the article. Amazon is committing around $200 billion in capital expenditures in 2026, primarily for AI infrastructure. Free cash flow dropped from $38 billion to $11 billion as a result, spooking Wall Street, but Jassy argues that the demand is real, backed by a $100 billion OpenAI commitment and AWS AI revenue already running at $15 billion annually. I remember when AWS was still a question mark as to why Amazon was even getting involved. And now look at them. This is a self-disruption. Fox Business, I believe, is the one that actually called it that, or something to that effect. Jassy wants to rebuild the retail shopping experience from a blank page rather than layered AI onto existing systems. He calls going back to the starting line one of the hardest decisions a leader can make, and argues it's less risky than standing still. Now, therein lies the life lesson, and we'll get into, because they go into discussing how this should affect Washington, D.C. as well, how government works. And it's something to consider. Okay, I'm not suggesting, before anybody jumps on in the comments, I'm not suggesting that we need AI running the government, okay? Gosh, God forbid, but who knows? I think that may eventually become part of our future. We'll talk about that some other day. But for now, so what this means is they're going to take Amazon, which is tremendously successful, right? I mean, it reshaped the world. The retail world is rotates around Amazon. There are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of companies that rely on Amazon specifically to deliver their goods. Okay, I know I actually work with, not directly, but indirectly work with a company that doesn't even have, you can't even buy their stuff on their website. You have to go to Amazon in order to buy their product. They did that specifically. They wanted this to be, basically they wanted no friction on taking people's credit cards, e-commerce, and storage. They just said, okay, we got this business, we got this product. Here you go, Amazon. Help us sell it. We'll promote it. And that's pretty much what they did. That's what they're doing today. It's very successful. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I say that they have everything through Amazon. They actually just recently got a contract with, I believe it was Rite Aid or one of those drugstore companies to actually start carrying their product. So I shouldn't say it's only Amazon, but they were built on Amazon. So here's this platform that's huge. We know that. And the CEO is calling for a complete teardown and rebuild. Okay, this is the business equivalent of somebody saying, let's tear down and rebuild the entire White House, not just the East Wing for the big beautiful ballroom. No. If somebody came in and said we're going to destroy the White House completely and rebuild it, that's the business level that we're talking about here. Because Amazon's platform is the biggest e-commerce platform in the world by far, hands down. It has, I don't even know, are we talking about billions of products? Hundreds of millions? I don't know. A lot. You can pretty much find anything there, right? That's one of the reasons that we use it so much. Even though, again, I don't like the company, I still am a hypocrite. I use it. There's no alternatives, not when it comes to combining everything. The price, the speed. Oh, goodness. Don't even get me started. Shocks me still. You remember, people in my generation remember, order today and you'll receive it in 6 to 8 weeks. It's like I'm sitting there, today making the order. Tomorrow? What do you mean tomorrow? It's sad, but it's true. It's true. Anyway, they're going to take this platform that's already super successful and they're going to tear it down and rebuild it with an AI framework. Instead of the other option, of course, would be to take the current system and just integrate AI into it. By Jassy's calculations, that won't work. And he's right. It won't. Now, again, not supporting Amazon as a company, not supporting AI as a concept, just looking at this objectively. Is this the right business move? Absolutely. And when he says that the greater risk is standing still, not investing hundreds of billions of dollars on a bet that it will be improved. See, generally speaking, I'm always against changes. Okay, I was there. I'll tell you a quick story. I was there talking to the CEO, talking to everybody that was over there at this website that you probably don't remember or recognize called Dig. Okay, DIGG.com. I don't know what they're doing today. I think I heard they were trying to rebuild or whatever. But back then, I was a quote unquote power user. There was about 250 power users that control the front page. And we would be able to post stories and have a very good chance of getting our stories to the front page. And that would end up sending 10, 20, 30, 50, 100,000 visitors to whatever website or story or video or whatever that we published. It was very similar, of course, to Reddit. You know, what Reddit does today. It did back there. I actually did had a speaking engagement at MIT with 3 or 4 other power users, and we kept getting asked questions about Reddit at the time. And I am proud to say that I was the only one that said, you know what? Dig is the now, but Reddit is the future. And here we are today. Where's Dig? And Reddit's back. But anyway, point being is that they were having challenges. At the time, they were trying to figure out the revenue piece. They were getting offers to be bought. They kept turning down the offers. Then the offers kept going lower, not higher. And so the founders were having challenges, trying to figure things out. They decided to do a revamp. And yeah, I got to see a company that at one point had been offered $200 million, which, again, we're talking about like the odds, right? This is before 2000. I think it was before 2010, right around there, maybe 2008, 2009, maybe whatever. So 15 years ago or more. $200 million for a tech startup was big money, but they turned it down because they wanted more money. Then they got offered $80 million. And it's like, well, we can't take that. We already turned down the $200 million last year. Why would we take less? The reason they should have taken less is because their value was going down. They kept failing miserably on the revenue side. They were starting to bleed users over to Reddit, and it was a challenge. Okay, so they decided that to rejuvenate, they were going to do a complete rebuild, and instead of focusing on the users, and particularly the power users, that was they thought that we were the problem. We thought that the reason they couldn't generate revenue is because people like me and other quote unquote power users were dominating the front page. We figured out how to identify and curate good content. Plus, we figured out the algorithm, and we were able to take advantage of it. And there was a lot of people that were making money off of it, but Dig was not one of them. So they decided to do a revamp, and they decided to get in bed with corporate publications, Mashable, which was huge at the time, Ars Technica, and of course New York Times, Newsweek, those things. And they, instead of working with the users, they worked with these bigger publications, thinking this was going to help them, and it didn't. I mean, it was a disaster. I remember I took a screenshot, and again, this is 15 years ago, but I took a screenshot at one point, the coveted Dig front page where small sites could become big all of a sudden, and there was the Dig effect that could take down servers and all this other stuff with the massive amounts of traffic. Well, at one point, out of the 10 stories on the front page, 9 of them were Mashable. It was an algorithmic glitch, but when I saw that, I knew it was the end. It was over. It was done. There was no more Dig. They ended up selling the carcass that was left after users' mass exodus. They sold it off for $500,000. Keep in mind, they had been offered $200 million and then $80 million, and ended up settling for $500,000 and let us walk away. That is what usually happens when we get into massive revamps of most sites. especially ones that are as big as Amazon. You'd think that this is primed and ready for failure. But there's one thing that separates them, and I already mentioned it, but the one thing that separates them, that gives them the leeway to make a massive change and not have a mass exodus of people leave. Well, I guess that's what an exodus would be. I'm redundant, but you get the idea. The only way that they could do that is because, even with a change to the website and the app and the platform, the one thing that's not going to change, and if anything, it's going to improve over time, and it has been improving over time, is speed. That's it. Even if people don't like, oh, I don't like the new Amazon interface. Well, where else are you going to go get your stevia packets delivered? Well, that's the food you could probably get through Instacart. But where else are you going to get your ball bearings delivered to you? In a matter of a day, if maybe a matter of hours sometimes. Where are you going to get anything? That's their speed is their one of their biggest selling points, maybe their biggest selling point. You order it, it's there very quickly. If it takes, certain things might take 4 or 5 days. That feels crazy, but it happens. Other things might take a long time based upon, how whatever the supplier is. But most of the things that you get on Amazon, you can get very quickly. The only quicker way to do it is to go find a store and buy it yourself. And we've just been trained otherwise. Point I'm trying to make is, I'm not saying that's good or bad to have it delivered. I'm saying that is the appeal. So people will be more interested in keeping things, even if they don't like the new interface, they'll force themselves to get used to it. So the whole idea that Andy Jassy is taking this huge risk, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Most times it would be. This time it's not. And that is the case or the scenario for the modernization of pretty much everything, including the government. It's one of the things this article goes into. Let's go back into it. Amazon runs multiple bets. We knew about that. The article draws a direct line between Amazon's institutional self-disruption and what the federal government should, but struggles to, do with its own obsolete systems. The resistance Amazon faces internally mirrors the political resistance to bureaucratic modernization. And we could even look at the efficiency component. Yes, Doge. It wasn't just that Doge was uncovering USAID and other corrupt systems. It was that Doge was uncovering the broken systems themselves that had been so embedded in DC that people stood to lose if those inefficiencies were ever discovered. That's why they basically ran Doge out of town. They did everything they could to they were willing to activate their sheep to go out and torch Tesla dealerships. What sort of desperation and insanity does it take to make that happen? Well, it's that. We got to see it. And this is why when I say, and I'm not suggesting we change the Constitution or change our form of government. I'm saying that we look at the institutions that have become embedded in Washington, D.C., and we decide, can we and should we have a complete and total revamp of everything? And this is where I believe that artificial intelligence will play a role. It already did, okay? They readily admitted, the Doge team readily admitted that almost everything that they found, most of the things they found, it's not like they're sitting there with magnifying glasses going through boxes of files and, traveling to Muskogee, Oklahoma to interview it. No, they were using AI. They were able to discover patterns, to isolate waste, and to try to promote efficiency. And it's something that, had they been given more power, more time, more energy, more people, more everything, then they could have revamped us. We need that. I'm not saying it necessarily has to be in the Doge format. It can be something completely different. But take the basis being the U.S. Constitution as it sits, and then rethink not the Constitution, but the implementation of the systems, the agencies, the departments, the personnel, everything. That is what Amazon is doing. Of course, it's odd to say this, but Amazon is doing it at a smaller scale, 1/1,000,000th of the scale of Washington, D.C., but it could be done. It could be done. And now, let's finish up by saying this. these types of changes are going to be happening very fast. They're going to affect you in your life. And I think that perhaps now more than ever, and I've said this multiple times in recent episodes and recent segments, now more than ever, you need to gird yourself with the armor of God. You might be asking, what in the world does Amazon and AI have to do with the armor of God? Because this type of change, these fluctuations that are going to be happening as a result of artificial intelligence, as a result of the insanity of the globalist elite cabal, the powers and principalities, they're going to be shoving more and more and more odd changes, strange changes, smoke screens, distractions, noise, noise, noise. It's coming. And I'm a firm believer in the art of discernment. The only way that we can be discerning is through a biblical worldview. So even as we sit here talking about Amazon revamping for AI, we have to look at the bigger picture. And to me, that bigger picture means big changes coming, not just going to affect Amazon, not just going to affect your e-commerce. It is going to affect everything. It's going to prompt other companies to make similar changes. Oh, what happens if the healthcare industry really does get to relook at things and start to revamp? It'll change everything. They're already trying to do that with the military. Pete Hegseth, you love him or hate him. I love him. But whatever you think of him, he is modernizing the concept of the military. It's not just about getting rid of wokeness. It's not just about, focusing on warfighters. It's about changing the way that wars are fought, changing the way that intelligence is collected. And I'm saying all these things not because I support them or denounce them. I say these things because each individual thing, maybe I support this, maybe I denounce that. But either way, they're coming. They're coming. The fact that Amazon, at its peak, companies don't make changes when they're at the top, not wholesale changes like this. And the fact that even they recognize that their survival depends on these types of changes, that should tell us the direction that this world is heading. So be ready to make changes. Be ready to adjust to this brave new world that we are facing. Whether we are in the biblical end times or not, that's to be determined. But even if we're not, the world itself is going through a transformation.
It's the smell.
It seems like just about every conservative podcaster, show host, whatever, in today's podcastosphere has a gold sponsor of some sort. And the unfortunate reality is the vast majority of these gold sponsors will push what's called numismatic coins. The reason they do this, they push these quote-unquote collectible coins, is because they can charge extremely high margins on them. We're talking 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, or higher. As hard as it is to believe, that's why they're so focused on these collectibles, because they can build a false value into the price and get people to buy them, to roll over their IRA or whatever. I work with a company that specializes in just straight up bullions, rounds, the stuff that you take it, you weigh it, you see what the price of gold or silver is, and that's how much it's worth. It's not about, oh my gosh, look at this picture of this whatever, whoever, somebody, something on the front. Oh, this is so great. This is amazing. It's going to be worth so much more than just your average silver round, which is what my guy likes to promote. Check him out. His name is Ira. He's a stud, and you can learn more from him by going to advisorbullion.com. That's advisor, BULLION, advisorbullion.com, or easy to remember, jdrucker.com/gold. That's probably the easiest way to do it. jdrucker.com/gold. Ira will walk you through. If you want to just pay cash, you just want to wire a few $1,000s and get it shipped discreetly to your door, and so you can put it in your safe, awesome. If you want to have a rollover or whatever for your retirement account, awesome. Ira can help you with all of that stuff. So check him out. Go to jdrucker.com/gold and get the real stuff. The administrative state is forming the beast system all around us, and believers must prepare. And the reason you must prepare is very simple. It is because you and I are the targets. We're who they're going to go after. Well, they're already going after us, but they're going to continue to go after us harder and harder as the system itself is formed. We know this because they have this they being the enemy. They have so many contradictions. It doesn't make any sense, right? Strange bedfellows afoot. Just look at the Red Green Alliance. You have on one hand, you have the radical Marxists who believe in LGBTQIA plus supremacy pretty much above all else. They believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are all ideas that run extraordinarily contrary, like diametrically opposed to the teachings of the Quran. And yet political Islam is able to, for whatever reason, make these illogical exceptions for the sake of their end goal. So the rise of people like Zohran Mamdani and Ilhan Omar. This is not accidental. This is very much their purpose and their goal. They, again, being the enemy. And if you would like to call the enemy, as I do, the powers and principalities, you can call them the globalist elite cabal. You can call them the New World Order, the Soros and Singham networks, whatever. The deep state, all of these are various names for the same overarching entity that is opposed to God, that hates God, and that hates those of us who faithfully worship God here on earth. We are their enemies, and they hate us far more than they hate each other. This is why the Red-Green Alliance is formed. Now, I believe that they will at some point fracture, and when they do, those on the red side of the Red-Green Alliance will find themselves suddenly not happy with the decisions that they had made or their predecessors had made. But that's a discussion for maybe another time. Maybe I'll just never bring it up again. I don't want to think about such things. What I do want to talk about is the solution. I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm not going to make you listen all the way through this to hear the important takeaway from this. And that is to gird yourself with the armor of God. Now, those of us who have read Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18, maybe you've read it, maybe you understood it, maybe you appreciate it, maybe you applied it to some extent. I need you. We need you. You need you to take that and center your life around the concept, to take it into consideration in nearly everything that you do. And that's a bold statement. It's a very stark request. I understand that. But now more than ever, it is so important. We are living in very different times than ever before. And there will be increasing persecution. Now, before anybody comes out and starts talking about, pre-trib rapture, post-trib rapture, mid-trib rapture, no rapture, whatever, no matter what your position is on if and when the rapture is coming, know this, that there's nothing. It might say, we are not to face wrath. Okay, good. Praise God for that. That's like the greatest gift, second only to our own salvation and, of course, eternity. But there's nothing in any doctrine or any Bible that says that we aren't going to go through incredibly tough times. Even if, let's say, there is a pre-tribulation rapture, there's still going to be tough times that lead up to it. There will be ways that the enemy will try and oftentimes succeed at taking Bible-believing Christians and shaking their faith, pulling them away, deceiving them, making them question what they do, making them sin. And this is why, above all other things that you can read about in any of my blog posts, that you can hear about in any of my podcasts, I'm telling you today that the most important takeaway, not just for today's show, but for all shows, is to gird yourself in the armor of God and to truly understand that, truly appreciate that. We have an article I have this posted on my Substack at jdrucker.substack.com. You can also find it over at Discern Report, where you can find pretty much all of my stuff. Everything that I publish now, whether it's my publishing or something that I curate or aggregate or any of our writers put together, we put it over there. That is becoming our central hub for all things, and we are obviously sort of centering the way that this operation, this company is operating. I don't want to call us a ministry because we're not truly a ministry, maybe not yet, but we do want to infuse our day-to-day lives with as much biblical understanding, biblical worldview as possible. And the way to do that is what we're developing today. So please check that out. And if you would like to, the best way to contribute, by the way, for those who have asked, and some have asked, because I don't have a Patreon, we don't have a GoFundMe or a GiveSendGo. The best way to do it is to go to, again, my Substack, jdrucker.substack.com, and take on a premium membership. You can do it for like $7 a month or like $70 a year. I think there's I don't even remember. Knowing me, because it's been so long, it was probably $700 or $777 or something like that as far as the super premium. There's nothing to it. Keep in mind, I don't believe in putting content behind paywalls. So it's not like, oh, if I do this, then I'll get something. No, unfortunately, you won't. But it is a greatly appreciated contribution to what we're doing here today. Sorry about that. and, and speaking of not the devil, but speaking of some good things, that is one of the investors participating in this. So Discern Report is now the hub for Discern Media, and my Substack, jdrucker.substack.com, is a part of it. So again, before that little aside, we have a an article that I have posted over there on my Substack, and I'm going to allow AI Rucker to read it for you right now because it's important. Number one, and number two, it deserves to be read in a format without the standard Rucker ohs and ahs and ah, or my chuckles or my jokes or anything like that. I'm going to let the AI read it directly to you. So take a moment, and when it's done, I will be back on the other side to talk further about girding yourself with the armor of God.
It's easy to sound like a fearmonger when the stakes are as high as they are today. All around us, we're seeing the rise of totalitarian tools and surveillance infrastructure that aligns far too well with biblical prophecy for any of us to ignore. President Trump's administration has made strides in combating the wokeness that has been taking over the country for decades. The seeds were planted long ago, but they were given a boost of anti-biblical Miracle-Gro when Barack Obama infused cultural Marxism into the pillars of government while simultaneously infecting the masses with the destructive ideology. Even during President Trump's first term, when he was less experienced and surrounded by more vipers in his own administration, the administrative state continued to accumulate power in preparation for the coming persecution. It has long been my belief that every destructive thing we're seeing in politics and culture is leading to the final attacks on the faith spoken of in prophecy. Events and decisions that seem completely unrelated to religious persecution are tied into the end goals of the powers and principalities in ways we often cannot see. Many, if not most, of the people engaged in these actions have no idea they are working on behalf of the rising beast system. The structures of our persecution will creep along until suddenly they burst into our lives. This is why the globalist elite cabal works through the increasingly ubiquitous red-green alliance of Marxism and political Islam. Marxist revolutions and Islamic jihads only make strange bedfellows if you don't appreciate their common enemy is God and his faithful servants on earth. Once you realize that we're the targets that the system is being built to eliminate us, it makes sense that a political ideology that abhors religious tenets can be so aligned with a religion that abhors woke philosophies. They may hate what each other represents in the end, but they hate the hope of Jesus Christ and his coming reign far more. If you think the GOP is going to protect us, you're not paying attention. If you think any of the positive moves made by the Trump administration are enough to stave off the demons for long, then you desperately need a dose of reality. The call to action here is very straightforward. Gird yourself with the armor of God. Most are familiar with the verses and understand the concept, but now more than ever, we need to truly discern what it means for us. Perilous times are coming, and the vast majority are not spiritually prepared. It is easier to make ready before things really start heating up. Ephesians 6:10-18 says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints." For many, knowing the need to wear the armor of God can be daunting because we do not know where to start. Most of us have been raised in a secular manner, sometimes with spiritualism sprinkled in, sometimes not. The first step in putting on the armor of God is realizing that all of our joys and troubles in this world are ephemeral, that no matter how real it all seems and important it all feels, it's a speck in the face of eternity. John was inspired to reveal our path in 1 John 2:15-17. "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." We are here for a reason. That is why we cannot simply accept our salvation and clock out. We must fight the good fight, which is why being in this world but not of this world is a mindset for action, not a call for complacency. You know the stakes. You've heard the call to action. Now let's look at the enemy. The modern administrative state is not merely inefficient or overreaching. It is a false god demanding allegiance that belongs to the Lord alone. When the FBI, IRS, DOJ, and other federal agencies target conservative Christians, pro-life advocates, and parents defending their children, they are not enforcing neutral law. They are enforcing a rival religion that exalts man's decrees above God's eternal order. Scripture is unambiguous on this point. "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Exodus 23. The bureaucratic beast rising in Washington has become precisely that, an idol clothed in the language of democracy, equity, and public safety. From the days of Pharaoh to Nebuchadnezzar, earthly powers have repeatedly demanded that God's people bow. Today's version wears business suits and carries badges, but the spirit is identical. Daniel refused to cease praying toward Jerusalem despite the king's decree, and his 3 Hebrew friends would not bow to the golden image. Their stand was not political rebellion, but theological fidelity. Likewise, when the Department of Justice labels concerned Christian parents as domestic terrorists for speaking at school boards, or when the IRS delays or denies tax-exempt status to biblically faithful ministries while fast-tracking progressive ones, we witness the same ancient pattern, the state claiming sovereignty over conscience. The theological root of this conflict is the rejection of God's delegated authority. Romans 13:1-4 establishes that the powers that be are ordained of God, and that rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. When agencies invert this, becoming a terror to good works while shielding evil, they forfeit their biblical legitimacy. The current weaponization against pro-life Christians after Dobbs, against churches that refused unconstitutional COVID mandates, and against parents resisting the grooming of children through transgender ideology is not bureaucratic error. It is the fruit of a worldview that has dethroned the Creator and enthroned the creature. Consider the chilling parallel to Acts 4 and 5. The apostles were commanded by the Sanhedrin to cease preaching in Jesus' name. Their response rings through the ages, whether it be right in the sight of God to hearken unto you more than unto God, judge ye. Acts 4:19. Peter and the others chose obedience to Christ over compliance with human authority. Today, Christian bakers, photographers, foster parents, and school teachers face similar ultimatums. Affirm the new sexual orthodoxy or lose your livelihood. Federal agencies increasingly act as the enforcement arm of that ultimatum. This is not random persecution. It flows from a deliberate theological inversion, where Scripture declares male and female created he them, Genesis 1:27, and that children are an heritage of the Lord, Psalm 127:3. The state now insists biology is fluid and parental rights are subordinate to bureaucratic experts, where the Bible commands, thou shalt not kill, Exodus 20:13. Agencies have protected the abortion industry for decades, while now turning their gaze on those who expose its evils. The reversal of Roe v. Wade was a victory, but since then abortions have risen because the rot was not in the legal status, but in the apparatus that supports it. The administrative state has become the high priest of a secular cult that demands conversion, compliance, and silence from dissenters, especially from those who bow to King Jesus. The Church must recover the doctrine of the lesser magistrate and the duty of interposition. When higher authorities command what God forbids or forbid what God commands, faithful believers and righteous civil officers are duty-bound to resist. This is not anarchy. It is fidelity to the true sovereign. As the prophet Isaiah warned, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed. Isaiah 10:1. America's founders understood this when they declared independence from a king who had become a tyrant. Today's remnant must understand it as federal agencies target prayer, parental authority, and the sanctity of life. The hour demands clarity. Christians are not called to retreat into pietistic irrelevance while the state devours the institutions and consciences of the next generation. We are called to stand, to speak, to refuse unlawful compliance, and to pray for righteous rulers who will fear God rather than man. The false god of the administrative state as we know it now will ultimately be replaced by the beast system in full, but until then we must fight against every act of evil it promotes. What we are witnessing in the selective targeting of conservative Christians by the government powers is not mere partisan abuse. After all, we have Republicans controlling the House, Senate, and White House. But even as gains are made to stop the lawlessness and return to something that more closely resembles a government guided by Scripture, we are still miles away from having the freedoms our Constitution promised, the freedoms our Bible demands. It is a prophetic dress rehearsal for the global system of control described in the book of Revelation. The infrastructure of surveillance, financial pressure, and ideological enforcement being built against Bible-believing Americans today will one day serve the Antichrist's worldwide regime. The signs are converging, and the church must awaken to the lateness of the hour. Jesus warned in Matthew 24:9, "Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake." For decades, this seemed distant to most American Christians, protected by constitutional safeguards. But the mask has slipped. Documents obtained through congressional oversight and whistleblowers reveal the FBI creating threat tags for radical traditionalist Catholic believers, monitoring traditional Latin Mass communities, and directing resources toward parents protesting at school boards. This is not protection of the public. It is preparation for the marginalization of those who will not conform to the emerging beast system. Revelation 13 describes a time when no one may buy or sell without the mark of the beast. While we are not yet at the final fulfillment, the mechanisms are forming: weaponized financial regulators, proposals for central bank digital currencies that could freeze dissenting accounts, and IRS targeting of conservative nonprofits. The same spirit that once used the IRS against Tea Party groups and pro-life organizations now operates with greater sophistication and less restraint. This is the soft totalitarianism that precedes harder persecution, training the public to accept the idea that certain beliefs, particularly Orthodox Christian ones, are dangerous and must be monitored. The prophetic pattern is clear. Just as the Roman Empire first tolerated Christianity, then demanded emperor worship, today's secular regimes first claimed neutrality, then tolerance, and now demands celebration of its sexual and ideological revolution. Refusal is labeled extremism. The language of disinformation, hate speech, and domestic terrorism is the contemporary equivalent of ancient accusations against Christians as haters of mankind. When the Biden-era DOJ memo equated pro-life activism with terrorism while soft-pedaling actual violence at pregnancy centers, it revealed the inverted morality of the last days. Daniel's vision of successive empires culminating in a final kingdom that shall devour the whole earth, Daniel 7:23, finds echo in the transnational coordination we see today. Globalist institutions, big tech, and federal agencies work in concert to suppress dissent on issues from election integrity to biblical sexuality. The COVID-era church lockdowns, followed by selective enforcement against conservative congregations, tested the waters. The targeting of parents as threats for defending biological reality in education is another milestone. Each step normalizes the idea that the state, not God, defines truth, family, and morality. Christ's Olivet Discourse warned of false Christs, wars, rumors of wars, and the love of many growing cold. We see the cultural love growing cold as institutions once dedicated to justice now serve ideological ends. The prophetic urgency is this: these developments are not the main event, but the setup. They acclimate society to surveillance, cancellation, and the criminalization of Christian conviction. When the final system arrives, much of the groundwork will already be laid: digital IDs, financial controls, social credit precursors, and a population conditioned to view biblical Christians as the primary obstacle to progress. The remnant church must respond with the wisdom of the sons of Issachar, who had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. 1 Chronicles 12:32. This means rejecting the spirit of the age, fortifying families and congregations, and boldly proclaiming the gospel even as opposition intensifies. The same Lord who sustained Daniel in the lion's den and the apostles in prison will sustain his people. But comfort without vigilance is folly. The signs point to increasing pressure on those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Revelation 12:17. The administrative state's war on conservative Christians is a warning siren. The beast system is not coming. It is being assembled piece by piece. Wise believers will see it, prepare accordingly, and stand firm until the King of Kings returns in glory.
It's incredible stuff. Again, you can find that over at jdrucker.substack.com, and you can support our work there. We are going to fight the good fight one way or the other. And right now we're doing it with a whole lot of sweat equity. There's not a ton of money flowing in, and that's fine. I mean, we'll do what we can do with whatever we have. My mission doesn't change. How it's fulfilled may change. Keep in mind, we have some very grandiose goals, right? But we also have very tempered ones. We understand that as we try to change the world is going to be against us. And I appreciate the challenge. If it were easy, then it wouldn't be worth fighting for. And that's the same thing as we put on the armor of God. The same thing must apply. In other words, we need to remember why we're doing things, what it is that is driving us. It's not just out of fear. or concern for the future. We're doing it because that's what we were told to do. That's our basic instruction. You read from the first words, the book of Genesis, all the way to the final words of the book of Revelation, and you'll realize that it's almost like a source code, right? It's filling us with the information that we need in order to know how to act, to know how to operate in this world. What Discern Media is going to be doing is trying to, it's not even about infusing a biblical worldview into secular things. It's more making people understand and realize that everything pertains to the Bible. Everything pertains to the faith. God is everywhere. He is part of everything. And knowing this, it should be no surprise that even when we're sitting there doing something that seems completely unrelated, we are either contributing to the advancement of this biblical worldview or we're detracting from it. There is no neutrality involved. This is why making certain that people recognize that they start to see and discern that every aspect of the world does in some way tie into the spiritual, the heavenly. It's either for it or it's against it. Every action we take, every thought that we have works in one direction or the other. And this is why wearing the armor of God becomes paramount. This is why in this world with so many distractions, so many inputs, so much noise, it can be very easy to lose sight of who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. So I pray that you start to appreciate, maybe you already do appreciate. Many of you are far closer to understanding and discernment than I am, and I appreciate you. Now let's talk. Let's spread this enlightenment. And I'm not talking about the Enlightenment. I'm not talking about any Illuminati stuff. I'm talking about just the appreciation and understanding that we don't just need revival, we need revolution. That's the only path. I mean, the opposite path is destruction. We're so far gone. It's very similar. Like when I look at all of the challenges, all of the sin in this world, all of the things that we're exposed to, that our children are exposed to, I realize that from a corruption perspective, from an evil perspective, evil is around us. It surrounds us. It makes me almost think along the lines of the national debt. It's just so big. How could we possibly tackle that? And we may not be able to ever take down the national debt. We may not be able to take down the evil in the world. But we do know, if you've read your Bible, in the end, it all gets taken down. There won't be any national debt, and the evil will be washed away. And we'll be able to live with our Lord and Savior in a beautiful eternity. So I am looking forward to that. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you'll stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.